It does not knock loudly, nor does it enter with shouting. It comes as a soft breath, a gentle invitation, a feeling that seems harmless. Temptation never calls itself an enemy. It borrows the form of safety, the voice of comfort, the fragrance of what is familiar. It does not ask you to sit. It only invites you to stay a little longer. And in that very moment, the soul begins to drift away from the orbit of holiness. Temptation always chooses to appear on the days we are weakest. When you are tired, lonely, or feeling unseen, it comes like a comforting hand. It whispers that you deserve to feel better, that no one knows, no one gets hurt, that once will not matter. But beneath those sweet invitations lies a steel hook hidden in honey. It does not only want to make you fall, it wants to own your soul. The danger of temptation is that it never arrives in terrifying forms. It comes in a small thought, a message you have not deleted, a glance you have not turned away from, a habit you have not stopped. It walks in quietly, but once inside, it refuses to leave. It sets up chairs of sin in your heart and makes your mind grow accustomed to the presence of darkness. Temptation does not need you to sin right away. It only needs you to hesitate, because hesitation is the open door. When you do not close it at the very first thought, it starts to make its home inside you. From there, the struggle begins and you start to bargain with what should have been denied. You convince yourself that you are still in control, that you can stop whenever you want. But that is the sweetest lie darkness ever taught mankind to believe. Temptation is the hallway that leads to sin, and that hallway was never meant for standing still. If you linger, you will step. If you step, you will fall. It begins with a fleeting thought, then becomes desire, then turns into action. And by the time you realize it, you are no longer in control. Sin never begins as sin. It begins as hesitation. The truth is that temptation cannot be defeated by feelings. You cannot make it disappear by telling yourself you are strong enough. True strength is not in never being tempted, but in recognizing it and cutting it off the moment it touches the door of your mind. Do not negotiate with what wants to destroy you. Do not try to understand why it came. Just close the door, because the closer you stand to the flame, the less you can feel that you are burning. Temptation does not need noise. It only needs your silence. It does not need to steal your soul. It only needs your indifference. And when you no longer speak against it, it begins to speak for you. It will tell you stories of pleasure, of control, of freedom. But in the end, you will see that the only thing it ever gave you was chains. No one can avoid temptation, but everyone can choose not to be defined by it. When it comes to not look at how beautiful it is, look at what it wants to take from you. Because every temptation carries a price, and that price is always higher than you think. Have you ever wondered why the things you know are wrong can sometimes look so strangely appealing? Why we can stand right at the edge of sin, hear the warning inside our hearts, and still choose to linger just one more second. 1 second that seems harmless, yet is enough for the heart to begin to drift. Temptation does not drag you away. It pulls you softly but persistently, like a kayak current beneath still waters. You do not even realize you are drifting until the shore is too far behind. James once wrote that each person is tempted when they are drawn away by their own desire and enticed. Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. It may sound like an old warning, but it remains true to this day. No one falls in a single moment. Every sin is conceived in silence. It begins with a thought you did not stop, a look you did not turn away, a feeling you allowed to stay longer than it should. At first, you still know how to hesitate, but the longer you let it stay, the weaker your reason becomes. Temptation does not need you to sin. It only needs you to let it hold your hand a little longer. And right there, the real battle begins. The Bible does not say that temptation is sin, but it is the hallway to sin, and no one can stand forever in that hallway without stepping forward. When a thought is nurtured long enough, it conceives. When an action is hidden carefully enough, it gives birth to death inside, the death of peace, of purity, of joy in prayer. You do not need to commit a great sin to drift away from God. Only a small compromise is enough. And little by little, the light within you fades. Temptation speaks fluently. It speaks with the voice of need, of emotion, of a wounded self. It tells you that you are only seeking a little comfort, a little justice, a little control. But what it truly wants is for you to forget that God is still enough for you. Temptation does not only want you to do wrong, it wants you to doubt that God's grace is still for you. If right now you are in such a battle, pause and be honest with yourself. Ask, is what you are holding on to bringing you closer to God or pulling you away from Him little by little? Because nothing can draw you near to darkness and keep you in the light at the same time. I want to ask you, what is it that most easily pulls you away? Is it loneliness, fear, or habits you think you have under control? Share it in the comments. Not to expose, but to remind yourself that you are not fighting alone, to let me know someone is listening, walking alongside, and that these words are reaching a real heart. For someone who creates messages like this, that is worth more than any number, because I believe a story can bring a little peace to you and your family. A small ray of light in uncertain days, then all of this effort is worth it. Write down what you are fighting against. No need for details. Only honesty, because honesty is the first step toward victory. When you name your temptation, you weaken it by half. And when you share it, others will realize they are not alone. I believe God is still at work in moments like this. In the lines you read in the quiet confessions of the heart, it says you. He understands you, and He still desires to redeem what seems lost. So do not let silence become a shelter for darkness. Speak up. Let me know you are there. Let me know I am not speaking into emptiness. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying, for listening with all your heart. I believe true peace is beginning to take root in this very moment. Temptation does not need to appear in a bar, in hidden messages, or in sinful places. It lives inside the human heart. It grows from wounds that have not healed, from desires that have not been placed in the right hands. Sometimes it wears the form of a beautiful dream, a good opportunity, an innocent invitation. But deep within, it strikes at your weakest point, the place where you believe you are lacking, and it promises to fill that empty space. Temptation knows exactly how to speak to the human soul. It does not shout. It does not force. It simply whispers a question in your mind. Is it really wrong if all you want is to be happy? Does it matter if all you seek is to be seen? It makes you believe that no one understands you the way it does, and that this small pleasure will hurt no one. But what you do not know is that every time you believe that whisper, a part of your soul is being exchanged. When the heart is unhealed, temptation does not need to look for a door. It only needs a crack. 1 second of distraction, 1 moment of weakness, 1 instant when you tell yourself you are still in control. But the moment you think you are in control, you have already lost it. Falling does not begin with rebellion, but with a small compromise, a yes as soft as a breath, yet strong enough to open the door for sin to enter and stay. The danger does not lie in temptation itself, but in how small we think it is. For sin does not need much, only a gap. Just as a speck of dust in the eye can blur our vision, an unguarded thought can cloud our faith. The Bible says that we are drawn away by our own desires, not by the devil outside. But by the emptiness within that, we have not let God touch. And that is exactly where the enemy strikes. It does not need to create new temptations. It only needs to remind you of what you have not surrendered. It waters the seed you refuse to pull out. You may pray every day, but if your heart still holds a dark corner, temptation will always find a place to stay. It knows when you are lonely, when you are tired, when you are unguarded. It does not attack with force, but with time, it waits until you are weak, then it knocks. Temptation never ruins a life in one night. It eats away slowly, bit by bit, until you lose your peace without noticing. It turns what once made you ashamed into something you start to justify. It makes you call wrong, right? And little by little, you can no longer see the line. That is how it wins. Not by a single fall, but by making you forget that you need to rise again. But there is one truth temptation fears the most, that you realize it does not come from the outside, but from within yourself, because when you know the root, you can pull it out. When you dare to face the wounds that are not healed, the desires not yet surrendered to God, you begin to reclaim mastery over your soul. No one defeats temptation by running from the world, only by letting the heart be renewed. Every time you let God's word enter your mind, darkness loses its ground. Every time you are honest with yourself, another chain breaks. Temptation has power only in the dark. But when light comes in, it dies away. So instead of asking why temptation keeps returning, ask what remains in your heart that makes it feel welcome. When the heart is full of light, darkness has no place to stay. Temptation is only a guest. It cannot remain unless you invite it. But if you stay silent, it will think the door is open. Close it with prayer, with honesty, with the resolve to let nothing take the place that belongs only to God. Because no victory comes from running away, only from letting your heart be illuminated. And when that happens, even if temptation comes again, it will no longer find a weak soul, but one that has learned to stand firm in grace. None of us are completely immune to temptation. It slips into the quiet corners of the soul when we are tired, wounded, or longing to be loved. It does not come to threaten, but to soothe. And in those fragile moments, we often confuse what brings temporary relief with what brings true healing. Temptation always knows how to disguise itself. It wears the mask of joy, of freedom, of the right to do as you please. It makes you believe that if something feels good, it cannot be wrong. It convinces you that one moment of weakness cannot ruin your journey. But what it does not say is that every moment of weakness leaves a small crack in your soul. And when those cracks begin to multiply, your heart is no longer whole. Some people do not sin out of malice, but out of pain. They are searching for something to make them feel less empty, less lonely, less afraid of facing what is inside. Temptation understands this, and it offers a cheap comfort, promising to fill that void. But what it gives is never healing, only forgetting. It quiets you for one night, but leaves behind a shame that lingers long after. Temptation does not want you satisfied. It wants you dependent. It draws you back again and again, each time taking a little more of who you are. You are no longer free. You become someone seeking comfort in what once hurt you. That is the cycle of sin. It makes you crave the very thing that breaks you. And then it blames you for falling. And in that shame, you return to it once more to escape. The world may tell you it is normal, that everyone has their weakness. But God did not create you to live in compromise. He does not call you sinful. He calls you his child. He did not come to condemn, but to redeem. What he desires is not perfection, but a heart that knows how to return. When you stop, when you admit that you are tired, weak, and in need of him, that is not failure. That is the beginning of healing. God does not wait for you to be strong enough before forgiving you. He steps into your weakest place, carrying grace and mercy. He does not ask why you fell. He asks if you want to rise, because he knows that the very place where you once fell, if surrendered to him, will become the place where his power to restore is revealed. So instead of hating yourself for the times you have fallen, learn to see them in the light of truth. You are not defined by your mistakes. You are defined by the one who calls you to stand again. Temptation wants you to believe your past is a sentence. But God says it is only the first chapter of a redeemed story. Every wound can become a testimony if you let him touch it. You may be weary from fighting the same battle for too long, feeling like you have prayed, yet nothing has changed. But remember, healing does not happen overnight. Like a broken branch, it takes time to mend. Yet what matters most is that it is still being cared for. Do not forget, only what is alive can heal. And your soul, no matter how many scars it carries, is still alive, still being touched by God each day. Temptation will keep knocking. But every time you choose honesty, prayer, or stillness, you win a small battle in a greater war. And through each of those steps, God is writing a new story within you. Not of failure, but of restoration. Be gentle with yourself, but never soft with the darkness. Know that you are not alone in this journey. Everyone who has been saved has fought their own battles with temptation. What matters is that they did not give up, and neither should you. Because God's grace is still enough, still waiting, still ready to renew your soul. Even when you feel unworthy, see, sometimes what makes us fall is not the strength of temptation, but the delay in turning away, like David on the rooftop. The moment he saw Bathsheba was not sin. But when he did not look away, sin began to write its next chapter. The glance became desire. The desire became plan. The plan became action. And that action opened a chain of painful consequences. Sin never comes alone. It brings shame, torment, and distance between man and God. What is frightening is not the act of sinning, but the moment we think we are still fine. David only needed to turn away, just one small decision, and history would have been different, but he lingered, and that lingering became the crack through which darkness entered. Temptation does not need you to fall right away. It only needs you to stay 1 minute longer. That 1 minute is enough to soften the heart and make reason start looking for excuses. And when reason begins to justify, sin has already won half the battle. It is strange how people often fall not because of what they do not know, but because of what they already know yet do not do. We know we should walk away, yet we stay. It is like playing at the edge of a cliff and believing we will not slip, but the closer we stand, the stronger the pull. And at some point, we can no longer control ourselves. Not because we are weak, but because we have walked too far from the safe boundary. Temptation always gives the illusion of control. It tells you that you can stop whenever you want, that you are different, stronger than others. But that is the sweetest lie, because the moment you believe you are in control, you have already lost it. No one can hold fire without being burned. No one can stroke a serpent without being bitten, and no one can dwell in sin and still keep peace. Jesus said, if your right eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out. It sounds harsh, but he was not talking about the eye. He was talking about the root of temptation. He was teaching that whatever causes a soul to fall must be cut off at the root. Even if it was once something we loved, because sometimes to be free, we must let go of even good things that have become the doorway to sin. True freedom does not come from holding on, but from the courage to let go. Cutting off does not mean hatred. It means awareness. It is knowing what is hurting you and having the courage to stop before it is too late. You do not need to be strong to overcome temptation. You only need to be humble enough to admit that you cannot when you acknowledge your weakness. God will give you his strength. When you take one step back from danger, you are already stepping closer to peace. Temptation does not only make you sin, it makes you forget who you are. It makes you forget that you are a child of God, loved, chosen, and forgiven. It makes you live as if you have no worth. When Christ already paid with his life to redeem you, so do not let sin define you. Let the forgiveness of God do that. If you have ever been like David, who saw, fell, and then repented, remember that his story did not end with sin. It ended with repentance, with a prayer asking God to create in him a pure heart. And God did. David was not rejected. He was restored. That means you can be too. No one has gone too far for grace to find them. No one has fallen too deep for God's love to reach them. Do not wait until everything breaks to turn back. Stop the moment you hear the warning in your heart. The freedom you seek is not in conquering temptation, but in turning away when it first appears. Every time you choose to step back, you choose life. And in each of those small steps, your soul is being taught by God to stand firm amid a world full of invitations. Peace is not the absence of temptation, but the presence of enough light to know the way home. There are things in life that cannot be overcome by endurance, only by decisiveness. Temptation is one of them. It does not need you to fall right away. It only needs you to stay a little longer. And when you stay long enough, you begin to lose the most precious thing you have, the peace in your soul. When Jesus said, if your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off, he was not teaching self-harm. He was teaching how to remove the root that feeds sin, because the soul cannot be healed if it still holds what is hurting it. There are relationships, habits, and places, are making you weaker. But because of fear of loneliness or attachment, you cannot let go. Yet what exhausts you most is not the act of leaving, but the pain of staying. Cutting off is never easy, because it feels like loss. But some losses are the beginning of freedom. Some things, when they leave, will leave an empty space. But that space is where God will enter. We often fear emptiness, so we let sin fill it with short-lived pleasures. But true peace is not found in gaining more. It is found in letting go of what does not belong to us. Sin always speaks in a sweet voice, while holiness speaks through silence. One brings pleasure, the other brings peace. One burns for a moment, the other lasts for a lifetime. And the choice is always yours. God does not force you to abandon what is wrong. He simply invites you to choose what is better. He knows there are things you must give up to keep your soul, because what keeps you awake tonight, if you do not let it go, may one day take the light from your eyes. Decisiveness is an expression of love for yourself. When you cut off what is harmful, you are not only protecting yourself, you are honoring the grace God has given you. You are saying, I believe you have something better. I believe I am enough even without this. And in that very moment, God begins to work. He does not just remove what is wrong. He heals the space it leaves behind. Maybe you have tried to cut something off and still went back. Do not be ashamed. Freedom does not come from one moment of courage, but from repeated persistence. Every time you choose to rise again, no matter how many times you have fallen, you weaken the power of sin. Be patient with yourself, because God is patient with you. He sees the effort in the nights you pray with tears. He knows the silent struggles no one sees. And he is still there, never letting you fight alone. When you choose to let go, do it with gratitude, do not fear. Remember, God never takes away without giving something better. He does not call you out of darkness to leave you in the desert. He leads you toward light, even if that light begins as only a small flicker in the night. But believe, if you keep walking, that light will grow brighter. Decisiveness is not only an action, it is a declaration. You are saying to temptation, I do not belong to you. I do not need what you promise. I choose to live truthfully, even if it means facing loneliness, even if it means learning to find joy in simple things. Because when you choose the narrow path, you will find yourself becoming lighter. Remember, no one can help you cut something off if you still wish to keep it. Freedom is a gift that opens only when you truly want to change. It may hurt at first, but the pain will pass and peace will remain. And when you look back, you will understand that what you cut off did not make you lose yourself. It gave you back to yourself. Temptation cannot survive in the heart of someone who has learned to let go, because when you no longer feed it, it dies quietly. That is, the moment you are freed not only from sin, but from fear itself, and out of that decisiveness, God will teach you the gentlest truth of all, that true freedom does not come from holding tightly, but from the courage to open your hands. There are temptations that do not lie in what you are doing, but in what you have not stopped. Many people pray for freedom, yet still hold tightly to the rope that once bound them. They say they want change, but keep doors unlocked and paths unerased. Temptation does not need you to open the door wide. It only needs a small crack to return. And as long as you are not decisive, it will always find a reason to stay. God does not only call you to stay away from sin, He calls you to stay away from the environment that gives birth to it. Because you cannot be healed while living in an atmosphere that weakens you each day. Many people have left their sin, but have not left the place where sin once lived. They change their actions, but keep their habits. They change their words, but stay in the same surroundings. And so even if the outside looks different, the inside remains bound. The environment is the silent teacher of the soul. It shapes what you think, what you feel, and who you become. You may desire holiness, but if every day you walk into the same space, hear the same sounds, and speak the same language of the past, your heart will slowly weaken without noticing. Change cannot be complete if you leave the sin, but stay in the air that sustains it. Samson did not lose his strength in one night. He lost it by staying too long in the arms of Delilah. He did not fall because of one mistake, but because of many moments of staying. Each moment that seemed harmless pulled him a little further from God, until one day his strength was gone. And he realized that captivity had not begun in the prison. But in the comfort of familiarity, that is what temptation always wants to create, to make you feel safe in what you should have left. Jesus once taught, if your eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out. It sounds harsh, but it means this: you cannot want freedom and still hold on to what made you fall. You cannot ask God to deliver you while still nurturing what keeps you bound. Freedom is not only leaving sin, it is leaving the habits, the places, and even the memories tied to the darkness. You may think you just need to be stronger, but true strength is often not in staying still. It is in walking away. Walking away is not always easy, because that place holds friends, memories, and a sense of safety that feels familiar, but you cannot find peace in what once made you lose it. You cannot call for light while keeping a corner for darkness. Sometimes the holiest act is not to stay and pray longer, but to stand up and walk away. Prayer nourishes the soul, but action saves it from the storm. If you know a place, a relationship, or a habit that weakens you, choose to leave it, not because you hate it, but because you want to live. Do not let affection or familiarity pull you back. God can heal the wounds you walk away from, but He cannot heal the one you keep reopening. Cutting off a toxic environment is your way of saying, I believe you are enough for me, even if I must walk alone. But in truth, you are not walking alone. Every step away from what is wrong is a step closer to God. He walks with you, even when you cannot feel him. It says your fear, and he knows how brave you are for choosing what is hard. You may feel empty for a while, but that emptiness will become the place where he plants new peace, a peace no longer tied to conditions or people. But born from his very presence, let yourself step out, even if your feet still tremble. Believe that you do not need all the answers to begin. Take the first step, and God will guide the rest. Temptation loses its power when you no longer give it a place to dwell. And when you leave the environment that held you captive, you are not only escaping sin, you are finding the soul that was once free. Leaving is not losing, it is returning to yourself, to your true worth, to lasting peace. Do not fear the closing of a door, for God will open another. And when you look back, you will see that what you thought was an ending was truly the beginning of a new life, where light is no longer hidden by the shadow that once felt familiar. Some people believe that staying away from temptation is enough, but the truth is, if your heart is still tied to the past, no matter how far you go, it will find its way back. You may leave the room, but if your mind remains there, you are not truly free. Temptation does not live only in places, it lives in memories, in habits, in the silent spaces you have not surrendered to God. True freedom is not only walking away from what is wrong, it is letting God renew what is within. Because if you have not allowed him to change how you see, you will keep searching for the old things in new forms. You can change people, jobs, or environments, but if your soul is not healed, the cycle will repeat. Temptation does not need a new strategy. It only needs to wait until you are tired and forget why you left. Real change begins when you are honest with yourself. Look deep inside and ask, what in my heart is still inviting the darkness back? Is it loneliness you have not spoken of? Is it the fear of being forgotten? Is it the need to prove your worth? Temptation cannot live when you dare to name the pain behind it, because darkness only has power in silence. But when light reaches it, as it disappears. That is why God teaches us to renew our minds daily. When you let his word go deep within, you do not just know what is right, you begin to desire what is right. When the light of his word touches your wound, old desires lose their grip. A healed soul no longer seeks joy in what once caused its pain. God does not only want you to avoid sin, he wants you to love holiness so deeply that nothing else can lure you away. So instead of trying to resist temptation by willpower, let God renew your heart. Because willpower can fail, but love endures. When you truly love God, the voices of sin lose their charm. They no longer hold value compared to the deep joy that only his presence can bring. Temptation may promise pleasure, but only God gives the kind of peace no one can take away. God does not want you to live in fear of sinning. He wants you to live in the joy of someone who has been set free. He does not want you to walk cautiously, always watching for where you might fall, but to walk in the light, knowing that the light itself is strong enough to keep you standing. True freedom is not avoidance. It is transformation so deep that sin no longer tempts you the way it once did. Learn to fill your life with what belongs to the light. Start with the smallest things, the songs you listen to, the words you read, the people you choose to be around. Every choice shapes your soul. When you nourish your heart with what is good, temptation loses ground. Just as a plant needs water to live, sin needs an environment to grow. Let the soil of your heart dry to darkness, and it will die. There will be times you feel you are walking against the flow. The world easily accepts everything, while you fight to stay pure. But do not be discouraged. No one has ever regretted choosing the way of light. And though the path may feel lonely, God walks beside you. He does not wait at the end of the road. He walks each step with you. He knows you will have moments of weakness, moments when you want to turn back. But he also knows that if you keep going, you will see yourself transformed day by day. Healing does not come through noise, but through the quiet moments between you and God. When you learn to be still long enough to hear his voice, the whispers of temptation lose their power. When your heart is filled with his peace, everything else becomes small. Believe that no matter how many times you have fallen, God has never stopped believing in your ability to rise again. Each time you choose light, he smiles, and though the journey of healing may be slow, it is still a journey toward freedom. Do not rush. Only be sincere, because with every day your heart softens before him. Temptation loses its voice, and peace begins to speak in its place. There are battles that cannot be won by human strength, only by surrender. Temptation belongs to that kind. It is not only a fight between right and wrong, but a battle between pride and humility. We humans always want to stand firm on our own, yet God invites us to kneel. Because when you fight alone, you fight by willpower, but when you kneel, you fight by the strength of God himself. Prayer is not a ritual. It is the breath of the soul. When you pray, you are not just speaking, you are releasing control. You are admitting that you are weak, but he is strong. You are not enough, but he is abundant. You do not know the way, but he is the way. And in that humility, power begins to move. For God does not dwell with those who try to appear strong. He is with those who know they need him. When Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he did not pray to avoid the trial, but to have the strength to walk through it. He said, "If it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." In that prayer was fear, pain, and perfect love. He did not run, he surrendered, and that surrender became the truest victory. Prayer does not make temptation disappear, but it makes your heart stronger. It does not change the circumstance immediately, but it changes you when you pray. God does not always remove the storm, but he teaches you how to stand in it. He does not always silence every whisper of sin, but he teaches you to recognize his voice among them. And when you know how to hear his voice, the voices of darkness lose their pull. Many believe prayer is for moments of weakness, but truly, prayer is how we stay strong. You do not wait until you fall to ask for help. You pray so that you will not fall. Like a soldier who does not wait for battle to wear his armor, you pray to be equipped before the fight begins. And often, those quiet moments of kneeling alone in the night are what decide victory or defeat. Prayer is not a perfect string of words. God does not count syllables. He listens to sincerity, even when all you say is, "Lord, I am tired," or "Please help me." He hears, and in that simplicity, your soul finds rest. Because God is not searching for eloquence. He is searching for honesty. You may wonder if prayer really changes anything when you have prayed so often, yet still feel weak. The answer is yes. But the first change happens not in your situation, but in you. Every time you pray, an old chain loosens. Every time you give him your fear, he gives you a little more peace. Freedom does not arrive in a flash. It comes day by day. In every moment, you turn your heart back to him. Temptation often comes in silence, and so does prayer. But the silence of temptation hides, while the silence of prayer heals. When you sit quietly before God, saying nothing, only breathing with him, the darkness within you begins to retreat. Because light does not need noise to win. It only needs to be present, and prayer is how that light enters. Remember, you do not pray to earn God's love. You pray because you are already loved. Prayer is not proof of devotion. It is evidence of relationship When you talk with him daily, not just in hardship, you are weaving a bond deeper than emotion. One day you will realize that it is this relationship that keeps you standing even while the storm still rages. Prayer does not replace action, but it gives strength to action. You still must leave the dangerous place. Block the number, delete the message, change the path. But when you pray, you no longer do these things in fear, but in peace, because you know you are not alone. God does not watch from afar. He stands in the battle with you. And every prayer you whisper, no matter how small, reaches his heart. So pray not only when you are weak, but when you are strong. Not only when you are afraid, but when you are calm, let prayer become your heartbeat. So that even when temptation knocks, your soul remembers who is knocking softly on the other side. The one who loved you upon the cross and still invites you home into his peace. True freedom does not come from prayer alone, but from action that walks hand in hand with faith. God can open the door, but you must be the one to step out. He can show you the way out, but you must have the courage to walk through it. Many people pray for deliverance, yet when the moment comes, they hesitate out of fear of change. They want to be free, but they still hold on to old habits, to the ties that once made them fall. That is why so many souls remain bound, even though grace has already unlocked their chains long ago. Temptation often begins small, and so does freedom. You do not need a giant leap to change, just one sincere step. A message deleted, a contact blocked, a habit replaced with something good. These small acts are declarations that you have chosen another path. You do not need to wait until you feel strong to do what is right. Strength does not come before action. It comes as you act. God does not ask you to be perfect before he helps you. He only asks for obedience. When he says, leave, it is not punishment. It is protection. When he says, let go, it is not because he wants you to lose, but because he sees that you deserve better. Every time you choose to obey, even when your heart trembles, you take one more step out of darkness. And the farther you go, the more you realize that light is not just at the end of the road. It shines in every small step you take. Spiritual discipline is not a burden. It is a shield. Just as a soldier would not go into battle untrained, a believer cannot stay strong without daily training of the heart. Learn to say no to the small thing. So when the great temptation comes, your spirit is already trained to choose what is right. Discipline, your eyes, of your hands, and your thoughts, because freedom is not doing whatever you want. It is knowing what is worth doing. Do not fear the days you feel weak, for even Jesus knew what it meant to be weary. The difference is, he always returned to prayer. And that is what you can do too. Whenever you feel yourself faltering, return to him. When fear rises, whisper his name. You do not need fancy words, just honest ones. God does not wait for perfect prayers. He waits for true ones. When you learn to live with both prayer and discipline, your heart begins to reshape. You will see that what once weakened you no longer has power over you. Not because temptation has vanished, but because you have changed. Your heart has been filled with what is good, and when it is full, there is no room left for darkness. Discipline does not take your freedom away. It gives you the strength to keep it. Do not think you have to do this alone. God never intended for you to fight by yourself. He places around you people who can pray with you, lift you up, and remind you of truth when your heart grows tired. Find someone with strong faith, someone you can be honest with about what makes you weak. When you dare to share, sin loses its power. When you pray together, you discover the strength of unity. Light is always stronger than darkness, especially when it shines from more than one heart turned toward God. This journey may not be fast, but do not lose heart. True freedom is not built in haste, but in steady choices made day by day. Every time you say no to what is wrong, you are saying yes to life. Every time you keep your heart pure, you are planting seeds for future peace. And even if you do not yet see the results, trust that God is working in the silence. Remember, your victory is not measured by never being tempted, but by refusing to let temptation win forever. When you fall, stand up again. When you drift, return. God does not count the number of your stumbles. He looks at the heart that still wants to keep going. Because grace not only forgives your past, it strengthens your present. When you live with discipline, prayer, and surrender, you are not just resisting temptation. You are learning to live in true freedom, a freedom that is quiet, steady, and deep within the soul. And in that peace, you will know that temptation no longer rules over you. For the one renewed by God no longer runs from darkness, but walks firmly in the light. As this journey comes to a close, I hope you pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and feel what is stirring within your heart. Perhaps you have realized that victory over temptation is not about becoming perfect, but about having the courage to begin again each day. None of us are strong all the time, but every one of us can choose to return to God when we are weak. He does not ask for perfection. He only longs for a heart that seeks His light. If what you have heard has made you reflect, has made you want to slow down a little, look deeper within yourself and walk more carefully on your path of faith, then do it today. Do not let these words stay only in your mind. Let them become action. Stay honest with yourself. Be brave enough to face what needs to be released, and remember that you are never alone. Temptation may knock, but you have the power not to open. Sin may call your name, but you can choose silence. And in the very moment you choose to stand on the side of light, heaven rejoices for a soul returning home. Each day you say no to what is wrong. You are saying yes to life. Every small step toward holiness brings a new piece of peace, deeper, truer, and more lasting. Remember, you do not need to be perfect to be loved. You only need to be willing to be renewed. And God, with His gentle grace, too will walk with you through every step, teaching you how to love yourself again, how to trust, how to live, and how to keep your heart pure amid a noisy world. Thank you for staying until the very end of this story. Thank you for listening, for opening your heart, for allowing these words to reach your soul. I hope that even a small part of what you heard today plants within you a seed of change, of faith, and of peace. I pray that you and your family will always be healthy, always sheltered in the love and peace of God. May each passing day remind you that He is working in your life, gently but surely, and when temptation knocks, I remember the light within you is always greater than the darkness outside. May you always walk in grace, in deep peace, and in the assurance that you are being led by the one who has never left your side.